I think I left time for a few questions. Yes?
Very inspiring. Let me ask you this question. There will be a convention and there will be a national platform of several planks because there are several issues there and there are others. Or put it this way, if you had 100 hours to divide up to talk to the American people about what is happening in America, what should happen, or what other way you want to do it, how much time would you allocate to what you're saying versus the other secular, we'll call them, issues, defined, more secular than sacred, or which would be the wider or narrower planks in the platform?
Well, you know, it's a little bit of a question. If you're going to build a house, right, how much time do you spend putting on the roof versus how much time do you spend laying down the foundations? Well, you know, if you think about that for a minute, sir, you will realize that that ain't a question of time. It's a question of priorities. Because if you start building the roof before you put down the foundations and the walls, you're doing yourself no good. And if also the foundations are crumbling and you're upstairs repairing the roof, you're going to end up very unpleasantly surprised when the house collapses and you collapse underneath it. So I think what we really have to ask is, do we really want to devote some time renewing the foundations and principle of this republic? And my answer to that question is we better. But I also think it's practically illustrated. Let's take several separate problems. Welfare, poverty, which is related to welfare, crime, educational performance, illegitimacy, again related to welfare, but still all separate issues, right? Also things like gangs and urban violence and so forth. Now, you and I have been reading the same studies for the last several months. They've been coming out, one after another. Oh, the National Fatherhood Institute, the N.E. Casey Foundation, even the New Democrats have begun to see the obvious. And that obvious is this. All of those problems, every single one of them, even in the minds of the most obtuse social scientist calculator, relate to one phenomenon: the self-destruction and breakdown of the marriage-based two-parent family in this country. And I think that what is clear, we were talking about this at the table, and maybe I think it a little more clearly, I see it a little more clearly than others, because I come from a community where if economic factors were going to destroy the family, they would have destroyed the family in 1910 or 1920 or 1930, and they did nothing of the kind. Matter of fact, in the black community, 75 to 80% of the children were being raised in two-parent families through everything that happened until the government came to help. And then when the government came to help, the government managed to accomplish what nobody else could. But do you know the reason? You know the reason we were talking at the table? You know the reason why the government accomplished that? Why the government did what even slavery couldn't do? During slavery, they estimate that between 50 and 60% of the children born to slaves were raised in two-parent families. Today, in our society, that number, by our measure, is 36%. You got to work to do more harm to a community than slavery. So how do we do it? We didn't do it by striking material blows at people. We did it by manipulating material incentives in such a way as to strike the most devastating moral blows that we could, to destroy the things that bind fathers to children and mothers to fathers to children. It was those moral factors that destroyed the family. So when you ask me, what should we spend our time doing? Repairing the material or the moral factors, I will tell you that what we have to spend our time doing is, first of all, ceasing our efforts to use material factors to destroy the moral ones, which we have been doing with a welfare system that devours families, with a sex education course that reduces human beings to less than animals, rather than respecting their moral capacities, to a system of justice that reduces human beings again to factors externally determined by their conditions rather than moral human beings. We've been doing everything wrong because we don't respect the moral identity of human beings. Don't you think that it's time we got back to that respect? Because if we don't, none of the policies we put together on material grounds are going to work. In fact, like the welfare policies we're proposing, they're going to do more harm. See, I'm watching this welfare reform debate, We spent 30 or 40 years taking the fathers out of the home. Now we're talking about whether we should put the mothers to work. Now I'll just say this very simply in summary answer. I don't believe when I look at the situation of America's poor folks, and I do because of being a black American, among other things, I spend a lot of time thinking about it. I don't believe that that situation exists because there are not enough women in the workplace, that there are too many mothers staying home to take care of their kids. I don't believe that's why that happens. Why is it then that we are proposing solutions to this problem that involve putting unwed mothers to work? Their problem is not that they are not at work. Their problem is that they are not married. That is the problem that is shown in every study, in every survey, in every empirical study ever done. Their problem is that they are not married. So why aren't we willing to stand up, look them in the eye, and say, if you're going to have babies, you got to get married? We will help you out on that basis, but it's time that as a civil society, we began to restore that. Now, I'll tell you something. That's not a material statement. That is a statement of moral preference. And I believe it's time we began to put some teeth back in that statement of moral preference. This society morally prefers that people be married. So I would say, let's devote as much time as we have to talking about these moral issues, because if we get them right, the rest will follow. If we get them wrong, all the rest will fail.